My wife died 3 years ago. Last week I got a call from a strange number. She said, "Honey, I don't have much time. Meet me at the place we met." In that moment, I froze, because what I discovered after that, I panicked. I'm glad to have you here. Follow my story until the end and comment the city you're watching from, so I can see how far my story has reached. My name is Edward, and at 61 years old, I thought I had experienced every kind of pain life could throw at me. I was wrong, dead wrong. It was a Tuesday evening in March when my world shattered all over again. I had just finished my usual dinner of microwaved leftovers, sitting alone at the kitchen table that once seated two. The house felt impossibly quiet, the way it had for the past 3 years since Tara passed away. The silence was my constant companion now, broken only by the ticking of the grandfather clock she had insisted we buy for our 20th wedding anniversary. I was washing my plate when the phone rang. Not my cell phone, but the old landline Tara had refused to get rid of, even when everyone else had moved on to smartphones. "What if there's an emergency and the cell towers are down?" she used to say. I had kept it after she died, partly out of habit, partly because disconnecting it felt like erasing another piece of her. The caller ID showed a number I didn't recognize, 704-555-8932. I almost didn't answer. At my age, most unknown calls were either telemarketers or scammers trying to steal what little I had left. But something made me pick up the receiver. "Hello?" Silence. Then a voice that made my blood turn to ice. "Honey." My hand started trembling so violently I nearly dropped the phone. That voice, that soft, gentle tone that had whispered good morning to me for 28 years. The voice that had told me she loved me with her dying breath in that sterile hospital room. "Edward, is that you?" I couldn't breathe. My chest felt like someone was sitting on it, pressing down with the weight of impossibility. This couldn't be happening. I had to be having some kind of breakdown, some delayed grief reaction that was making me hear things. "Tara." The word came out as barely a whisper. "Oh, thank God." "Edward, listen to me carefully. I don't have much time." Her voice was strained, frightened in a way I had never heard before. Not even during her final days when the cancer was eating her alive from the inside. "This isn't real," I said, more to myself than to whoever was on the other end. "You're dead. I watched them lower your casket into the ground. I threw dirt on top of it." "Edward, please. I know this is confusing, but you have to listen to me. Meet me at the place we first met. You remember, don't you? The little café on Maple Street where you spilled coffee all over my white dress?" My legs gave out. I slumped against the kitchen counter, the phone pressed so tightly against my ear that it hurt. Of course I remembered. It was the story we told at every anniversary, every family gathering. How I had been so nervous asking her out that my hands were shaking, and I knocked over my cup before she even sat down. She had laughed instead of being angry, and that laugh had made me fall in love with her right there on the spot. But no one else knew those details. We had never told anyone about me spilling the coffee, only that we met at Romano's café. It was our private joke, our secret. "Who is this?" I demanded, my voice cracking. "What kind of sick game are you playing?" "Edward, it's me. It's really me. I know you buried someone 3 years ago, but it wasn't me. I can't explain everything over the phone, but please, you have to trust me. Meet me at Romano's tomorrow at 2 o'clock. Sit at our usual table by the window." Our usual table? I was crying now, hot tears streaming down my face. "How do you know about our usual table?" "Because I'm the woman who sat there with you every Sunday morning for 15 years. Because I'm the woman who carved our initials into that table with your pocket knife when Tony wasn't looking. Because I'm the woman who told you I was pregnant with Sarah while sitting in that exact spot." My heart stopped. Sarah, our daughter, the light of our lives until she became something else entirely, something cold and calculating that we barely recognized. Even Tara hadn't known what to do with Sarah in those final years. "Please, Edward, I'm begging you. Something terrible happened, something I never could have imagined. But I'm alive and I need to see you. I need to explain." The line went dead. I stood there in my kitchen, holding the phone like it was a lifeline to a world that no longer made sense. My reflection stared back at me from the dark window, an old man with gray hair and lines carved deep by grief. relief. I looked like someone who was losing his mind. Maybe I was. I called the number back immediately. It went straight to a recording saying the number was no longer in service. I tried again, pressing each digit carefully. Same recording. That night I didn't sleep. I sat in my recliner, staring at the framed photo of Tara on the side table. It was taken just 2 months before she died, during what we thought would be our last vacation together. She was thin, too thin, but still beautiful. Still the woman I had fallen in love with 30 years ago. I picked up the photo, tracing her face with my finger. "What's happening to me, sweetheart?" I whispered to the glass. "Am I finally losing it?" But deep down, in a place I was afraid to acknowledge, I knew that voice had been real. It had been her, which meant everything I thought I knew about the last 3 years was a lie. The question that kept me awake until dawn was simple and terrifying. If Tara was alive, who had I buried? The morning sun filtered through the kitchen blinds, casting long shadows across the floor where I had paced for most of the night. My coffee had gone cold hours ago, but I kept gripping the mug like an anchor to reality. The phone call felt like a dream now, but the tremor in my hands told a different story. I kept replaying every word, every inflection. It had been Tara's voice. I was sure of it, but how could that be possible? I had been there when she took her last breath. I had held her hand as it went cold. I had made every arrangement for her funeral, chosen the casket, written the obituary. By 7 in the morning, I couldn't stand it anymore. I needed to see her grave, to remind myself of what was real. Maybe then this madness would stop. Cedar Hill Cemetery was a 20-minute drive from our house. I had made this trip every month for 3 years, always on the 15th, the day she died. The groundskeepers knew me by now. Old Mr. Henderson always nodded when he saw me coming with my small bouquet of yellow roses, Tara's favorites. But today felt different. Today I wasn't coming to grieve. I was coming to investigate. I parked near the oak tree that shaded Tara's section and walked slowly toward her grave. The headstone was exactly as I remembered it. Simple gray granite with her name, dates, and the inscription we had chosen together during one of her better days. Beloved wife and mother, but something was wrong. I knelt beside the grave, running my fingers along the edges of the headstone. The ground around it looked disturbed, not settled the way soil should be after 3 years. There were small holes in the earth, as if someone had been digging or testing the ground. "Can I help you?" I spun around to find Mr. Henderson approaching with a concerned expression. He was in his 70s, a kind man who had been working at the cemetery for over 30 years. "Henderson," I said, struggling to keep my voice steady. "Has anyone been around my wife's grave recently? Besides me, I mean." He scratched his gray beard, studying the ground where I had been looking. "Funny you should ask. Had some folks here about 2 weeks ago, said they were from the county health department. Something about soil contamination testing. They were taking samples from different sections." My blood went cold. "Did they show you identification?" "Well, they had official-looking paperwork and everything. Nice young woman and an older gentleman. Said it was routine, nothing to worry about." Henderson paused, noticing my expression. "Why? Is something wrong?" I stood up slowly, my mind racing. Soil contamination testing at a 3-year-old grave. That made no sense. "Did they take samples from this specific plot?" "Matter of fact, they did. Spent a good bit of time here, actually." The woman kept checking some kind of electronic device, taking readings. I felt like I was going to be sick. "Henderson, I need to ask you something, and I need you to be completely honest with me. When my wife was buried 3 years ago, did you personally oversee the burial?" His face grew serious. "Of course I did. Been doing this job for 3 decades, Mr. Edward. I don't take shortcuts when it comes to laying folks to rest." "Was the casket sealed when it went into the ground?" "Naturally. That's standard procedure." He paused, studying my face. "Mr. Edward, what's this really about?" I couldn't tell him about the phone call. He would think I was losing my mind, and maybe I was. "I've just been having some doubts about the arrangements. Grief does strange things to a person's memory." Henderson nodded sympathetically. "I understand. If it would give you peace of mind, I could show you the burial records. Everything's documented. I'd appreciate that." 20 minutes later, I sat in Henderson's small office, staring at paperwork that should have comforted me, but only raised more questions. The burial permit was there, signed by Dr. Marcus Stern, the oncologist who had treated Tara. The funeral home documentation looked legitimate. But as I studied the signatures, something nagged at me. "Henderson, do you remember Dr. Stern being here for the burial?" "Can't say that I do, but family doctors don't usually attend burials unless they're close personal friends." "Why?" I stared at Dr. Stern's signature on the death certificate. I had met with him several times during Tara's treatment. and something about this signature looked different. The handwriting was similar, but the pressure was wrong. The loops too perfect. Could I get a copy of these documents? Of course. On the drive home, I couldn't shake the feeling that I was missing something important. The woman at the grave, the soil testing, the perfect signature, too many coincidences. I pulled into my driveway and sat in the car for a long moment, staring at the house Tara and I had shared for 25 years. Every room held memories of her, from the kitchen where she had taught Sarah to make cookies to the bedroom where we had spent her final nights together. Sarah. I hadn't thought about my daughter's behavior during Tara's final weeks until now. Sarah had been so helpful, so attentive. She had handled all the medical appointments, coordinated with the doctors, even arranged for hospice care when the time came. At the time, I had been grateful. I was too broken by watching my wife die to handle the logistics. But now, sitting in my car with Henderson's documents in my lap, I remembered other things. How Sarah had insisted on a closed casket funeral. How she had discouraged me from spending too much time at the hospital during Tara's final days. How she had been present for every conversation with Dr. Stern. My hands started shaking again as I pulled out my cell phone and scrolled through my contacts until I found Dr. Stern's office number. Dr. Stern's office. This is Patricia speaking. This is Edward Morrison. My wife Tara was Dr. Stern's patient 3 years ago. I need to speak with him about her case. I'm sorry, Mr. Morrison, but Dr. Stern retired 18 months ago. Dr. Williams has taken over his practice. Would you like me to schedule an appointment? Retired? But I had received follow-up paperwork from Dr. Stern's office just last year. Routine insurance documentation. Could you give me Dr. Stern's current contact information? I'm sorry, but we don't give out personal information. However, I can tell you that Dr. Stern moved to Florida after he retired. If you need medical records, Dr. Williams can access those for you. I hung up and stared at the documents in my lap. If Dr. Stern had retired 18 months ago, who had signed that death certificate? And more importantly, who had been sending me those follow-up documents? Inside the house, I went straight to the filing cabinet where I kept all of Tara's medical records. I pulled out the folder and spread everything across the dining room table. As I examined each document, a pattern began to emerge that made my stomach turn. The handwriting on the later documents was different from the earlier ones, subtly different, but enough to notice once you were looking for it. The signature on the death certificate was definitely not the same as the signature on Tara's initial treatment documents. I sat back in my chair, my head spinning. Someone had forged Dr. Stern's signature on my wife's death certificate. Someone had arranged for fake county workers to test the soil around her grave. Someone had been maintaining the illusion that Dr. Stern was still practicing medicine. The phone rang, making me jump. For a wild moment, I thought it might be Tara again, but the caller ID showed my neighbor, Mrs. Patterson. Edward, dear, I hope I'm not bothering you. I was just wondering if you knew that nice young woman who was at your house yesterday morning. I saw her leaving around 10 o'clock. She looked familiar, but I couldn't quite place her. My blood turned to ice. What did she look like? Oh, medium height, brown hair pulled back in a ponytail. She was wearing scrubs, like a nurse or medical assistant. I just assumed she was someone from hospice or your doctor's office. But then I remembered Tara passed 3 years ago, and I thought it was odd. I thanked Mrs. Patterson and hung up, my mind reeling. Someone had been in my house yesterday morning while I was at the grocery store. Someone in medical scrubs. Someone who looked familiar. I ran upstairs to our bedroom and began checking everything. Our jewelry box, important documents, family photos. Nothing seemed to be missing, but several items had been moved slightly. The photo of Tara and Sarah from last Christmas was turned at a different angle. The small ceramic box where Tara kept her prescription bottles had been shifted 3 inches to the left. Someone had been searching for something. I was about to check the rest of the house when I noticed something that made my knees weak. On Tara's nightstand, next to her reading glasses that I had never been able to bring myself to put away, was a single yellow rose. Fresh, still damp with morning dew. I picked it up with trembling fingers. It was real, definitely real. But who could have put it there? And why? Unless... I closed my eyes and whispered to the empty room, Tara, if this is really you, if you're really alive, please give me a sign that I'm not losing my mind. The house remained silent except for the ticking of that damn grandfather clock downstairs. But when I opened my eyes, I saw something that stopped my heart. On the dusty surface of the nightstand, written in the thin layer of dust beside where the rose had been placed, were two letters that definitely hadn't been there yesterday. E.T. Edward and Tara, the initials we had carved into that table at Romano's Café 30 years ago. The same initials that only my wife would know to write. I spent the entire night staring at those two letters in the dust, afraid that if I blinked, they would disappear and I would wake up from whatever strange dream this had become. But morning came, and they were still there. E.T. written in my wife's delicate handwriting, the same way she used to sign our anniversary cards. By 1:30 the next afternoon, I was sitting in my car outside Romano's Café, my hands gripping the steering wheel so tightly my knuckles had turned white. The lunch crowd was thinning out, and I could see our old table by the window, empty, waiting. I had arrived 45 minutes early, partly because I couldn't stand waiting at home any longer, and partly because I needed time to convince myself this wasn't an elaborate breakdown. Maybe I had written those letters myself in some kind of fugue state. Maybe the rose had blown in through an open window. Maybe I was creating evidence to support a delusion that my wife was still alive. But as I sat there watching people come and go, a part of me hoped desperately that it was real. 3 years of loneliness had worn me down to nothing. 3 years of waking up in an empty bed, of cooking for one, of having no one to share the small moments that make life worth living. If there was even a chance that Tara was alive, I had to take it. At exactly 2 o'clock, I walked into Romano's. Tony, the owner, looked up from behind the counter and smiled sadly. He had known about Tara's death, had even sent flowers to the funeral. "Edward, good to see you. Your usual table?" I nodded, not trusting my voice. He led me to the table by the window where Tara and I had shared thousands of cups of coffee and conversations. I ran my finger along the edge, feeling for the initials we had carved there so many years ago. They were still there, worn smooth by time but unmistakable. I ordered coffee and waited. At 2:15, a woman entered the cafe. She was wearing a long gray coat with the hood pulled up, despite the warm March afternoon. She moved slowly, carefully, like someone who was in pain or afraid of being seen. When she looked around the cafe, her gaze found mine immediately. My heart stopped. Even with the hood shadowing her face, I knew those eyes. Brown with flecks of gold, the eyes that had looked at me with love for 28 years, the eyes that had closed for the last time in that hospital bed 3 years ago. She walked toward my table, and with each step, my world shifted a little more off its axis. This wasn't possible. This couldn't be happening. But as she sat down across from me and lowered her hood, I was looking at my wife. She was different, though, thinner than she had been even during her illness, with new lines around her eyes and a wariness that hadn't been there before. Her hair, once a rich auburn, was now completely gray and cut short, but it was her. It was definitely her. "Hello, Edward." Her voice was the same, but softer, more fragile. I reached across the table without thinking, needing to touch her, to prove she was real. She pulled back slightly, then seemed to reconsider, and let me take her hand. It was warm. Real. The same small scar on her thumb from where she had cut herself slicing vegetables on our first anniversary. The same wedding ring, though it now hung loose on her finger. "How?" The word came out as a croak. "How is this possible? I watched you die. I held your hand when you stopped breathing." Tears filled her eyes. "You held someone's hand, but it wasn't mine. Edward, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry for what you've been through, for what you've believed for 3 years. But I had to let you think I was dead. It was the only way to protect you." "Protect me from what?" She glanced around the cafe nervously, then leaned closer. "From Sarah." The bottom dropped out of my world. "Sarah? Our daughter? What does Sarah have to do with this?" "She tried to kill me, Edward. She was killing me slowly, over months. The cancer was real, but it wasn't what was making me so sick toward the end. It was the pills she was giving me. The extra medications she said were to help with pain and nausea." I pulled my hands away from hers, my mind reeling. "That's impossible. Sarah loved you. She took care of you. She was there every day. She was there every day because she was poisoning me every day." Tara's voice was steady, but I could see the pain in her eyes. "Do you remember how confused I became in those final weeks? How I couldn't think straight, couldn't remember things?" I did remember. The doctors had said it was normal, that the cancer and the pain medications could cause cognitive issues. But now that she mentioned it, the confusion had started before she was on heavy pain medication. She was giving me something else, Edward. Something that was supposed to look like a natural progression of my illness. If Dr. Brennan hadn't figured it out when he did. I would have died for real. Dr. Brennan. Who's Dr. Brennan? My real oncologist. Dr. Stern was part of Sarah's plan. She had been paying him to falsify my medical records, to make my condition look worse than it was, so she could increase my medication without suspicion. I felt like I was going to be sick. Why? Why would she want to kill you? Tara's face crumpled. The inheritance, Edward. Your family's land in Montana, the farm that's been in your family for 4 generations. It's worth almost $2 million now because of the oil rights. If I died first, everything would go to you, and when you died, it would all go to her. But if you died first, I would inherit it, and she knew I planned to leave most of it to charity. The coffee in my stomach turned to acid. I remembered the conversations Tara and I had about our wills, how she had wanted to leave the bulk of our estate to cancer research, and only give Sarah enough to be comfortable. Sarah had argued with us about it, but I never thought. So she decided to kill you first, I said, the words tasting like poison. Dr. Brennan was the oncologist covering for Dr. Stern one weekend when I had a crisis. He ran some tests that Dr. Stern hadn't ordered and found traces of oleander in my blood. Do you remember that beautiful oleander bush Sarah planted in our backyard the spring before I got sick? I remembered. Sarah had been so proud of that bush, had insisted on making tea from the flowers for Tara, saying it would help with her strength and energy. Oleander is deadly if you consume it regularly in small doses, Tara continued. It mimics heart problems and organ failure. Combined with the other drugs she was giving me, it would have looked like complications from cancer. But how did you fake your death? I saw you in that hospital bed. I watched the monitors go flat. Dr. Brennan had been secretly treating me for the poisoning while maintaining the illusion that I was getting worse. He gave me something to slow my heart rate and breathing to almost nothing, then declared me dead when Sarah wasn't in the room. She had stepped out to call the funeral home, probably to make sure everything was arranged the way she wanted. My hands were shaking so badly I could barely hold my coffee cup. The casket, the burial. I was empty except for sandbags to give it the right weight. Dr. Brennan had contacts at the funeral home. They were as horrified as he was when they learned what Sarah had been doing. I stared at her, trying to process everything she was telling me. My daughter, the little girl I had taught to ride a bicycle and helped with homework, had spent months slowly murdering her own mother for money. Why didn't you tell me? Why did you let me grieve for 3 years? Because Sarah would have killed you too if she suspected I was alive. She's been watching you, Edward, waiting for you to die naturally so she can inherit everything. But lately, she's been getting impatient. A chill ran down my spine. What do you mean? The woman your neighbor saw leaving our house yesterday, that was Sarah. She's been coming by when you're out, probably putting something in your food or medications. Have you been feeling tired lately? Confused? Having trouble sleeping? I had been feeling all of those things, but I had attributed it to age and grief. Now I thought about the headaches that had been getting worse. The way I sometimes felt dizzy when I stood up, the strange metallic taste in my mouth that I had been having for weeks. She started poisoning you too, Tara said quietly. That's why I couldn't wait any longer. I had to warn you. We have to go to the police, I said, starting to stand up. We have to stop her. With what proof? I'm supposed to be dead, remember? Dr. Brennan is dead too. He died in a car accident 6 months after he helped me disappear. Sarah made sure there were no loose ends. I sank back into my chair. So what do? We get proof. Real proof that can't be explained away or covered up. Tara reached into her coat pocket and pulled out a small digital recorder. I've been documenting everything, gathering evidence. But I need your help to get Sarah to confess. How? She thinks you're starting to decline, that the poisoning is working. Tomorrow night she's planning to come over with dinner. Probably to give you a larger dose to speed things along. When she does, you're going to pretend to be sicker than you are. Let her think you're dying. If she believes she's about to inherit everything, she might get careless. She might say something we can use. I looked at my wife, this woman I had loved for 30 years, who had been living in hiding while I mourned her death. The plan was dangerous, but what choice did we have? What if something goes wrong? What if she realizes you're alive? Then we both die. Tara said simply. But if we do nothing, you're going to die anyway, and she's going to get away with it. I reached across the table and took her hands again, holding them tightly. Where have you been living? How have you survived? Dr. Brennan's sister has a cabin in North Carolina. She's been taking care of me. helping me get stronger. But I've been watching from a distance, checking on you when I could. That's how I knew what Sarah was doing. The rose on the nightstand, the initials in the dust. She smiled for the first time, a ghost of the smile I remembered. I needed you to know it was real. I was afraid you wouldn't believe the phone call. I almost didn't. I thought I was losing my mind. You're not losing your mind, Edward. You're about to get your life back. As we sat there in Romano's café, making plans to catch our daughter in the act of murder, I realized that everything I thought I knew about my family had been a lie. But for the first time in 3 years, I had hope. My wife was alive, and tomorrow night, we were going to make sure she stayed that way. The next 24 hours were the longest of my life. After leaving Romano's, I drove home in a daze, my mind struggling to process everything Tara had told me. My daughter, my only child, had murdered her own mother and was now slowly killing me. The little girl who used to climb into my lap to read bedtime stories had become a monster. That evening, I sat in my kitchen, going through the motions of making dinner, but everything felt different now. Every piece of food, every glass of water, every pill in my medication organizer was potentially deadly. I found myself examining everything under the bright kitchen light, looking for signs of tampering. The casserole Sarah had brought me last week was still in the refrigerator. I pulled it out and studied it carefully. It looked normal, smelled normal, but according to Tara, normal was exactly how poison was supposed to look. I wrapped it in plastic bags and put it in the garage. If we survived this, it might be evidence. Around 9 o'clock, my phone rang. Sarah's name appeared on the caller ID, and my stomach clenched. I let it ring 4 times before answering, trying to keep my voice normal. Hi, sweetheart. Dad, how are you feeling? You sound tired. Did I? Or was she hoping I would sound tired? I'm okay. Just had a long day. I've been worried about you. You seemed a little confused when I stopped by yesterday. I thought maybe I should come over tomorrow night and make you dinner. You shouldn't be eating all those frozen meals. Yesterday, she was talking about the day she had broken into my house and searched through my things. The day she had probably added more poison to my food or medication. That's sweet of you, but you don't need to worry about me. Dad, you're 71 years old, and you've been living alone for 3 years. It's natural for me to worry. Her voice had that patronizing tone she had used with Tara during her final weeks, like she was talking to a child. I'll come over around 6. I'll bring everything we need. Everything we need, including whatever she planned to use to finish the job. Okay, I said. I'll see you tomorrow. I love you, Dad. The words felt like ice picks in my chest. I love you too. After she hung up, I sat in the silence of my house and tried to understand how it had come to this. Where had I gone wrong as a father? How had I raised a daughter capable of such coldness? But then I remembered something Tara had said at the cafe, something that had been bothering me. Dr. Brennan had died in a car accident 6 months after helping Tara disappear. Sarah had made sure there were no loose ends. I pulled out my laptop and searched for news articles about Dr. James Brennan. It didn't take long to find what I was looking for. The accident had happened on a rainy night on a remote stretch of highway. Dr. Brennan's car had skidded off the road and hit a tree. He was pronounced dead at the scene, but as I read more carefully, details jumped out at me. The accident had happened just 3 miles from Sarah's apartment at the time. Dr. Brennan had been driving to the airport, supposedly to catch a flight to a medical conference. But when police checked with the conference organizers, there was no record of Dr. Brennan being registered to attend. I searched deeper, looking for any connection between Sarah and Dr. Brennan beyond Tara's medical care. What I found made my blood run cold. 6 months before Dr. Brennan's death, Sarah had taken a job at a medical equipment company. According to her LinkedIn profile, she had been promoted rapidly, given access to specialized equipment and pharmaceuticals, the kind of equipment that could be used to fake someone's death, the kind of pharmaceuticals that could stop a heart and restart it. But there was more. I found a photo from the company's Christmas party, taken just weeks before Dr. Brennan died. In the background, barely visible, was Sarah talking to a man who looked very much like Dr. Brennan. They were standing close together, their body language intimate in a way that suggested more than a professional relationship. My hands were shaking as I screenshot the photo and saved it to my desktop. If Sarah had been involved with Dr. Brennan personally, it would explain how she had convinced him to help fake Tara's death, and it would explain why he had to die when he became a liability. I spent the rest of the night going through every document, every photo, every piece of communication I could find related to Sarah. What emerged was a pattern that horrified me. 3 years ago, Sarah had been in significant debt, credit cards maxed out, student loans in default, facing eviction from her apartment. But immediately after Tara's death, her financial situation had improved dramatically. She had paid off her debts, moved to a better apartment, even bought a new car. Where had the money come from? I found the answer in Tara's medical records. Someone had been systematically billing our insurance company for treatments that never happened, equipment that was never delivered, medications that were never prescribed, the fake Dr. Stern visits, the fraudulent test results. All of it had generated thousands of dollars in insurance reimbursements. Sarah hadn't just killed her mother for the inheritance. She had been stealing from us the entire time. By morning, I felt like I was looking at the life of a stranger. This woman who called me dad, who brought me casseroles and worried about my health, was a calculating killer who had been systematically destroying our family for money. The hardest part was that I had to pretend nothing had changed. When she arrived at 6 o'clock the next evening, I had to act like the confused, declining old man she expected to see. She knocked on the front door instead of using her key, which struck me as odd. When I opened it, she was standing there with a warm smile and a covered dish that smelled like her mother's pot roast. "Hi, Dad. How are you feeling today?" I let my shoulders slump a little, made my voice sound weaker than usual. "Tired. I've been having trouble sleeping again." "Oh, that's not good. Maybe after dinner we can look at adjusting your sleep medication." Adjusting it. Right. Probably increasing the dose until I never woke up. She bustled into the kitchen, playing the role of the caring daughter perfectly. She served the pot roast with mashed potatoes and green beans, just like Tara used to make. It looked delicious and completely innocent. "This is wonderful," I said, taking a small bite. "It tastes just like Mom's. I used her recipe. I found it in her old recipe box." Sarah watched me eat, her eyes never leaving my face. "Dad, I've been thinking, maybe it's time we talked about making some changes." "What kind of changes?" "Well, this house is getting to be too much for you to maintain. And with your health issues, maybe you should consider moving somewhere with more support. Assisted living, or even a skilled nursing facility." I forced myself to take another bite while my mind raced. She was planning to move me to a nursing home where she could control my care completely, where any decline in my health would be attributed to age and illness rather than murder. "I'm not ready for that yet," I said. "I know it's hard to think about, but we need to be practical. And there are financial considerations too. This house, the property in Montana, the investments. We should probably set up a power of attorney so I can help manage things if you become unable to." There it was. She wanted legal control over everything while I was still alive to sign the papers. I pretended to consider it while taking another bite. The pot roast was delicious, but I was careful to eat slowly, to hide food under other food on my plate. I had no idea what she might have put in it. "You know," I said, letting my voice drift a little, "sometimes I feel like your mother is still here with me, like she's watching over us." Sarah's expression didn't change, but I saw something flicker in her eyes. "That's normal, Dad. Grief can make us feel like our loved ones are still present. Sometimes I even think I hear her voice." "Dad, that's..." Sarah set down her fork and studied my face carefully. "How often does that happen?" I shrugged, trying to look confused and a little embarrassed. "I don't know. Time gets mixed up sometimes. Yesterday I could have sworn I saw her in the garden tending to her roses." "Her roses died years ago, Dad, remember? We pulled them out after the funeral. But Tara's roses hadn't died. I had seen them just yesterday, blooming despite being neglected for 3 years. Someone had been taking care of them, someone who knew how much Tara had loved that garden. "Did we?" I said, letting confusion creep into my voice. "I thought I could have sworn." Sarah reached across the table and patted my hand. Her touch made my skin crawl. "Dad, I think these episodes are getting worse. Maybe we should make an appointment with Dr. Williams." Dr. Williams, who had taken over Dr. Stern's practice. I wondered if Sarah had already made contact with him, had already started planting the seeds for my inevitable decline. "Maybe you're right," I said. "Sometimes I feel so confused, like there are things I should remember, but can't." "It's okay, Dad. That's why I'm here, to take care of you, just like you and Mom took care of me." The irony of those words coming from someone who had murdered her mother was staggering, but I nodded and smiled, playing my part. As the evening wore on, I noticed that Sarah kept checking her watch. She seemed to be waiting for something, expecting something to happen. I began to feel genuinely tired. More tired than I should have felt after eating dinner. "Dad, you look exhausted. Maybe you should go to bed early tonight." I was about to agree when I heard a sound that made my heart stop, a car door slamming in the driveway. Sarah froze. "Are you expecting someone?" "No," I said, and I wasn't lying. Tara had said she would stay hidden until we had proof. The doorbell rang. Sarah's face went white. "Don't answer it," she said quickly. "It's probably just a salesperson." But the doorbell rang again, followed by knocking. Insistent knocking. "Dad?" A voice called from outside. "Dad, it's me. I need to talk to you." Sarah gripped the edge of the table so hard her knuckles turned white, because the voice calling from outside wasn't mine. It was Tara's. And according to every record that existed, according to everything Sarah believed, Tara Morrison had been dead for 3 years. The color drained from Sarah's face so completely that for a moment I thought she might faint. Her hands trembled as she gripped the table, her breathing shallow and rapid. The confident, caring daughter who had been manipulating me all evening was gone, replaced by someone who looked like she was seeing a ghost, which, from her perspective, she was. "That's impossible," she whispered, more to herself than to me. "That's impossible. She's dead. I watched her die. I made sure she—" She stopped herself, but it was too late. The words hung in the air between us like a confession. The knocking came again, more insistent this time. "Edward? Sarah? I know you're both in there. We need to talk." Sarah shot to her feet, knocking over her chair. "This isn't real. This isn't happening." She was backing toward the kitchen window, her eyes wild with panic. "She's dead. I buried her. I saw the casket go into the ground." "Sarah," I said quietly, "who did you bury?" She spun around to face me, and for the first time, I saw the monster that had been hiding behind the mask of my loving daughter. Her face was twisted with rage and something that looked like terror. "Shut up," she hissed. "Just shut up and let me think." But there was no time to think. The front door opened, and I heard footsteps in the hallway. Sarah had always insisted on having a key to my house. "For emergencies," she said. Now I realized Tara had been using that same key to check on me, to leave me signs, to make sure I was still alive. "Hello, Sarah." Tara appeared in the kitchen doorway, and the sight of her made Sarah stumble backward against the counter. Tara looked stronger than she had at the café. More solid somehow. She was wearing the blue dress that had always been Sarah's favorite, the one she used to say made her mother look like an angel. "You're dead," Sarah said, her voice barely a whisper. "You're dead. You have to be dead." "No, sweetheart, I'm very much alive, thanks to Dr. Brennan figuring out what you were doing to me." Sarah's face went from white to gray. "Brennan? That bastard wasn't supposed to be there that night. Stern was supposed to be on duty." "Yes, Dr. Stern. Your partner in all of this. The man you paid to falsify my medical records, to help you slowly poison me to death." Tara stepped closer, and I could see she was holding something in her hand. A small recording device. "Did you really think I wouldn't figure it out eventually? You're supposed to be dead," Sarah screamed, her composure finally snapping completely. "I gave you enough oleander to kill a horse. I watched your heart stop. I watched them put you in the ground." "You watched them put sandbags in the ground," Tara said calmly, "while I was hidden in Dr. Brennan's cabin, recovering from the poison you fed me for months." Sarah's eyes darted between Tara and me, and I could see her mind racing, trying to find a way out of this nightmare. "Dr. Brennan is dead," she said finally. "Car accident. Very tragic." "Yes, very convenient too. Just when he was about to go to the police with evidence of what you'd done." Tara's voice was steady, but I could hear the pain underneath. "Did you run him off the road yourself, or did you hire someone?" "I don't know what you're talking about." "Of course you don't. Just like you don't know anything about the fake insurance claims, or the forged death certificate, or the fact that you've been slowly poisoning your father for the past 6 months. I felt sick. 6 months. She had been trying to kill me for 6 months. Sarah's hand moved toward the knife block on the counter, but Tara was faster. "I wouldn't do that if I were you. The police are already on their way." "You're lying." "Am I?" Tara held up her phone. "I called them 20 minutes ago before I came inside. Told them I had evidence of attempted murder and insurance fraud. They should be here any minute." As if on cue, I heard sirens in the distance growing closer. Sarah's face crumpled, and suddenly she looked like the little girl I remembered, the one who used to run to me when she had nightmares. "Daddy," she said, turning to me with tears in her eyes. "Please, you have to understand. I never wanted to hurt anyone. I needed the money. The debts were crushing me. I was going to lose everything." "So you decided to kill your mother?" "It wasn't supposed to happen like that." The tears were streaming down her face now, but her voice was rising with desperation. "The oleander was just supposed to make her a little sick, so she'd be more dependent on me. But then she started getting sicker than I expected, and I panicked. I couldn't stop without her getting suspicious. So you killed Dr. Brennan too? He was going to ruin everything. He was going to tell everyone what I'd done. I couldn't let that happen. The sirens were getting closer. Sarah could hear them too, and the sound seemed to drive her over the edge. She grabbed the largest knife from the block and pointed it at Tara. "This is all your fault," she snarled. "If you had just died like you were supposed to, none of this would have happened. Dad would have lived out his natural life, and when he died, I would have inherited everything quietly. No one would have been hurt, except that you weren't willing to wait for his natural life to end," Tara said. "You started poisoning him too, because I needed the money now. Do you have any idea what it's like to be drowning in debt? To watch your credit score get destroyed while your parents sit on millions of dollars they don't even need? So you decided we didn't deserve to live?" "I decided I deserved to live too." Sarah's grip on the knife tightened. "I'm young. I have my whole life ahead of me. You two are old. You've already lived your lives. It wasn't fair for me to suffer while you hoarded money you'd never spend." The sirens were right outside now. Car doors slammed, and I heard heavy footsteps on the front porch. "Police, open up!" Sarah looked toward the front door, then back at Tara and me. Something shifted in her expression, a cold calculation that chilled me to the bone. "If I'm going down," she said quietly, "I'm taking you both with me." She lunged at Tara with the knife, but Tara was ready for her. She dodged to the side, and Sarah's momentum carried her into the kitchen island. The knife clattered across the floor. "Police, we're coming in!" The front door burst open, and suddenly the kitchen was full of uniformed officers with guns drawn. Sarah was on her hands and knees scrambling for the knife when one of the officers tackled her. "Sarah Morrison, you're under arrest for attempted murder and conspiracy to commit murder." As they read Sarah her rights and led her away in handcuffs, she looked back at me one last time. The tears were gone now, replaced by something cold and empty. "I hope you're happy, Dad," she said. "You chose a dead woman over your own daughter." "No," I said quietly. "I chose the truth over a lie." After the police left with Sarah, Tara and I sat in the living room, not quite touching, not quite believing it was over. The recording device sat on the coffee table between us, containing Sarah's full confession. "She'll go to prison," Tara said, "for a long time." I nodded, but I felt no satisfaction in it. Only a deep, bone-deep sadness for the little girl who had become a monster. "What happens now?" I asked. Tara looked at me with those brown eyes I had thought I'd never see again. "Now we figure out how to live again, together. But legally, you're dead. How do we?" "Dr. Brennan's sister has been working with a lawyer for months, preparing for this day. It's complicated, but it can be done. There's precedent for people who've had to fake their deaths to escape danger." I reached for her hand, still amazed that it was real, that she was real. 3 years, Tara. We lost 3 years. "No," she said, squeezing my fingers. "We saved the rest of our lives." Outside, I could hear the neighbors gathering, probably wondering what all the police cars had been about. Soon, everyone would know that Tara Morrison had come back from the dead, and that her own daughter had tried to kill us both. But for now, in the quiet of our living room, it was just the two of us. Two people who had loved each other for 30 years, who had been torn apart by greed and manipulation, and who had found their way back to each other against impossible odds. "Are you really okay?" I asked, studying her face for signs of the illness that had nearly killed her. "I'm getting stronger every day. Dr. Brennan's sister is a nurse. She's been taking good care of me." Tara's voice grew soft. "Edward, there's something else. Something I need to tell you." My heart clenched. "What?" "The reason I finally decided to reveal myself, to risk everything. It wasn't just because Sarah was poisoning you." She took a shaky breath. "The cancer is back." The words hit me like a physical blow. "What? How long have you known?" 2 months. Dr. Brennan's sister arranged for some tests when I started feeling sick again. It's aggressive this time. The doctors think I have maybe 6 months. I felt the world tilt around me. After everything we had been through, after fighting so hard to survive Sarah's attempts to kill us, we were going to lose each other anyway. "That's why I couldn't wait any longer," Tara continued. "I couldn't let you die thinking I had abandoned you. I couldn't let Sarah get away with what she'd done, and I couldn't die again without saying goodbye properly." I pulled her into my arms, holding her as tightly as I dared. She felt so fragile, so precious. We'll fight it. We'll get the best doctors, the best treatment. Edward, I'm tired of fighting. I'm tired of being sick. I just want to spend whatever time I have left with you, in our home, living instead of just surviving. I understood. 3 years of hiding, of watching from a distance as I grieved for her, had taken their toll. She didn't want to spend her final months in hospitals and treatment centers. Then that's what we'll do, I said. Whatever you want. I want to tend my garden again. I want to sit on the front porch and watch the sunset. I want to cook dinner for my husband and sleep in our bed and wake up next to you every morning until I can't anymore. We can do that. We can do all of that. As we sat there holding each other, I realized that even though we would have less time than I had hoped, it would be real time, honest time, time without lies or deception or fear. Sarah had tried to steal our lives, but in the end, she had only made us appreciate them more. 6 months later, I sat in the courtroom watching my daughter be sentenced to 25 years to life in prison. Sarah stood with her back straight, her face expressionless as the judge read the charges. First-degree murder of Dr. James Brennan, attempted murder of Tara Morrison, attempted murder of Edward Morrison, insurance fraud, and conspiracy. She had aged years in the months since her arrest. Her hair had grown out, showing gray roots she had always been careful to cover. She looked smaller somehow, diminished by the weight of what she had done. When the judge asked if she had anything to say before sentencing, Sarah turned and looked directly at me for the first time since that night in the kitchen. "I'm sorry, Dad," she said, and for a moment I heard an echo of the little girl who used to apologize for breaking my coffee mugs or tracking mud through the house. I'm sorry for all of it. I wanted to believe her, but I had learned the hard way that Sarah was capable of saying anything if she thought it would serve her purposes. The prosecution had painted a picture of someone who had manipulated and deceived people her entire adult life, who had seen other human beings as obstacles to overcome, rather than people to love. Tara squeezed my hand as the bailiff led Sarah away. We had both testified during the trial, Tara's dramatic return from the dead making headlines across the country. The media had dubbed it the Lazarus case, and for weeks our quiet neighborhood had been overrun with reporters and curiosity seekers. But today it was finally over. Sarah would spend the rest of her life in prison, and Tara and I could focus on the time we had left together. The doctors had been wrong about 6 months. It had been 8 months since Tara's return, and while the cancer was progressing, she was still fighting. Still here, still mine. We walked out of the courthouse hand in hand, past the crowds of reporters shouting questions we had no intention of answering. Our lawyer had already given a statement on our behalf. We just wanted to go home. The drive back to our house took us past Romano's Café, and I slowed down as we approached it. Through the window, I could see our old table by the window where everything had changed. "Do you want to stop?" Tara asked. "Do you?" "Actually, yes, I think I do." Tony greeted us like old friends when we walked in. The whole town knew our story by now, but Tony had always been discreet. He simply led us to our usual table and brought us coffee without being asked. "It's strange," Tara said, stirring cream into her cup. 8 months ago I sat here terrified that you wouldn't believe me, that you'd think I was some kind of imposter or that you were losing your mind. I did think I was losing my mind, I admitted. If you hadn't left those signs, the rose and the initials, I probably would have convinced myself the phone call was a hallucination. And now here we are. Sarah's in prison, we are legally married again, and I'm officially alive according to the state of North Carolina. The process of bringing Tara back from the dead, legally speaking, had been complicated but not impossible. Dr. Brennan's sister, Margaret, had kept meticulous records of everything, including the original plan to fake Tara's death. With Sarah's confession and the evidence of the insurance fraud, the courts had been willing to correct the record. "Margaret called this morning," Tara said. "She wanted to know if we're still planning to come for Christmas." Margaret Brennan had become like family to us over the past months. She was the one who had hidden Tara, nursed her back to health, and helped plan her dramatic return. She was also the one who was now helping Tara manage her cancer treatment. "Are you feeling up to travel?" Tara considered the question. She was thinner than she had been even during her first bout with cancer, and she tired easily. But her eyes still held that spark of determination that had made me fall in love with her 30 years ago. "I think I'd like to see the mountains one more time," she said. "And Margaret's been so good to us. It would mean a lot to her." "Then we'll go." We sat in comfortable silence for a while. watching the afternoon traffic through the window. Romano's was busier than it used to be, partly because of all the media attention our story had brought to the little cafe. Tony had hung a small plaque near our table that read, "Where Love Conquered All," which we found both embarrassing and oddly touching. "Edward," Tara said suddenly, "do you ever wonder what would have happened if Dr. Brennan hadn't been working that night? If he hadn't figured out what Sarah was doing?" I had wondered about that many times. You would have died for real, and I would have followed within a year or two. Sarah would have inherited everything and probably never been caught. Do you think she ever really loved us, or were we always just assets to her? That was the question that haunted me most. When had my daughter stopped seeing us as her parents and started seeing us as obstacles to her financial security? Had there ever been genuine love there, or had it all been manipulation from the beginning? "I think she loved us when she was little," I said finally. "I think something changed when she became an adult and started measuring her worth by her bank account instead of her relationships. I blame myself sometimes. Maybe we should have been stricter about money when she was growing up. Maybe we should have made her work for things instead of just giving them to her. Tara, we raised her the same way we would have raised any child. We loved her, we provided for her, we tried to teach her right from wrong. Whatever went wrong with Sarah, it wasn't because we failed as parents." But even as I said the words, I wasn't entirely sure I believed them. How do you reconcile the little girl who used to make me Father's Day cards with crayon drawings of our family with the woman who had spent months slowly poisoning her own mother? "The therapist says that some people are just missing something essential," Tara said. "Empathy, conscience, the ability to see other people as real. She says it's not necessarily something parents can fix or prevent. We had both been seeing a counselor to help us process everything that had happened. It was strange. Grieving for someone who was still alive, trying to understand how the daughter we had raised could have become capable of such coldness. Do you think she'll ever truly understand what she did wrong?" I asked. "I don't know, but I hope someday she does. I hope someday she realizes that the love we offered her was worth more than any amount of money." We finished our coffee and drove home as the sun was setting. Our house looked different now somehow. The shadows that had seemed sinister for so long were just shadows again. The rooms that had felt empty and haunted were full of life. Tara had thrown herself into restoring her garden with an intensity that sometimes worried me. She spent hours each day planting and weeding and watering, determined to bring beauty back to the space that had been neglected during her 3-year absence. "The roses are blooming again," she said as we pulled into the driveway. They were. The entire side yard was bursting with yellow roses, Tara's favorites. They had survived neglect, winter, and 3 years of believing their caretaker was dead. Now they were thriving again, just like we were. That evening, we sat on the front porch swing that I had installed a month after Tara's return. It was something we had always talked about doing but never got around to before her illness. Now we made a point of sitting there every evening, watching the world go by and talking about everything and nothing. "Mrs. Patterson brought over another casserole today," Tara said. She said it was her grandmother's recipe for strength and healing. Our neighbors had been endlessly kind since Tara's return. Casseroles, flowers, offers to help with grocery shopping or yard work. It was as if the entire community wanted to help us reclaim the time we had lost. "Did you eat any of it?" "A little. It was actually quite good. Much better than my cooking has been lately." Tara's appetite had been poor for weeks, and she was losing weight faster than either of us wanted to acknowledge. But she was still here, still fighting, still finding joy in small things. "The lawyer called," I said. "The insurance company finally settled. They're paying us $300,000 for the fraudulent claims Sarah made. What do you want to do with it?" We had talked about this several times. The money felt tainted somehow, connected to everything Sarah had done to us. But it was also an opportunity to do some good. I was thinking about what you said before about leaving money to cancer research. Maybe we could donate it now, while we're still here, to see it make a difference. I'd like that. And maybe we could set up something for families dealing with financial stress, something to help people before they get desperate enough to. She trailed off, unwilling to finish the thought. Before they start seeing their loved ones as obstacles instead of people? Yes. As we swung gently in the evening air, I marveled at the strange turns life can take. A year ago, I had been a lonely widower, slowly dying of poison, mourning a wife I thought was dead. Tonight, I was sitting next to that same wife, planning how to spend the rest of our lives together, however long that might be. No regrets? I asked. About what? About coming back. About revealing yourself and putting yourself in danger. You could have stayed hidden, let Sarah inherit everything, and lived quietly in North Carolina until I died alone, letting you believe I had abandoned you. Tara shook her head. Never. Whatever time we have left, we're going to spend it together, the way it should be. A year later, Tara passed away peacefully in our bed on a Sunday morning in spring. I was holding her hand when she took her last breath, and this time I knew she was really gone. The funeral was nothing like the elaborate charade Sarah had organized 3 years earlier. This time it was simple and honest. Friends and neighbors gathered to celebrate a woman who had fought impossible odds to spend her final months with the people she loved. Margaret Brennan came down from North Carolina and helped me plan everything. She had become the sister Tara never had, the family member who cared more about love than money. She was so happy, Margaret told me as we stood by the grave where Tara would actually be buried this time. These past months with you, even with the cancer, were the happiest I ever saw her. I knew she was right. Despite everything we had been through, despite the pain and the fear and the betrayal, Tara had died knowing she was loved. She had died in her own home, in her own bed, surrounded by the life she had chosen rather than the one that had been forced on her. 6 months after Tara's death, I received a letter from Sarah. It was the first communication I'd had from her since the trial. "Dad," it began, "I know you probably don't want to hear from me, but I had to write this. I've been in therapy for a year now, and I'm starting to understand things about myself that I never saw before. I was sick, Dad. I don't mean physically sick, but something in my head was wrong. The therapist says I have something called antisocial personality disorder, and that it makes it hard for me to feel empathy or understand how my actions affect other people. I'm not writing this to make excuses. I know what I did was unforgivable. I killed Dr. Brennan. I tried to kill you and Mom. I stole from you and lied to you and made your lives hell for my own selfish reasons. But I want you to know that I'm working on it. I'm trying to understand what love actually means, what family actually means. I'm trying to become the daughter you deserved instead of the monster I became. I don't expect you to forgive me. I don't expect you to visit or write back. I just wanted you to know that I finally understand what I destroyed, and I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I read the letter 3 times, then put it in a drawer. Maybe someday I would write back. Maybe someday I would be ready to have that conversation, but not yet. For now, I was content to tend Tara's garden, to visit Margaret in North Carolina a few times a year, and to volunteer at the cancer center where we had donated the insurance settlement money. The center had used our gift to create a fund for families in financial crisis, helping them get the support they needed without resorting to desperate measures. And sometimes, on quiet Sunday mornings, I would sit at Romano's Café at our old table and remember the day my wife came back from the dead to save my life. Tony always brought me coffee without being asked, and sometimes he would sit with me for a few minutes and talk about the strange ways love can conquer impossible odds. The plaque by our table had been replaced with a bigger one that read, "In memory of Tara Morrison, who proved that love is stronger than death." And in a way, she had. Because even though she was gone now, the love we had shared was still there, still real, still powerful enough to light up the darkest places and overcome the most impossible circumstances. Sarah had tried to kill that love, but in the end, it had outlasted everything she could throw at it. And it would outlast me too, carried forward by everyone whose life had been touched by Tara's courage and determination to fight for what mattered most. Love had won,